here, the third running back. Was one of my favorite recruits we had. He was one of the rated, as you know, depending on what site you look at, as always, one of the top 10 running backs in the nation. This is Will Mahone from Youngstown, Ohio. What I really liked about Will, not just his playmaking ability, is the fact that he was probably the best football player / recruiter I've ever seen. He went as far and he went and recruited. I mean, he tried everything he could to get Keith Marshall to come to Notre Dame, and that didn't work out. So, when that didn't work out, and Kivari Russell, he knew he was signing. He was calling Kivari Russell and convincing him to come to Notre Dame, how they can be this great dynamic duo together. And, Will's a great recruit. He's a good guy. He's a Notre Dame man through and through, as Coach Kelly talked about him. One thing that we have to note about Mr. Mahone is, unfortunately, he did miss part of his senior year with an injury. To my knowledge, he is healed. He's playing basketball right now for his high school in his last year of high school. But it's another guy that's going to be on there. He's a great guy to add to his overall depth that we're going to have there at the running back position.
Yeah, definitely. And in his senior season, he did return 2 kickoffs for scores. So that's another way you work him in and get him used to the speed of the game is on the kicking game or the kick return game. He actually in his senior season, I believe he played running back and also played linebacker. So and that's one of those things in the spread where you've got to have guys that can block, and we talked about that earlier in our shows about how some of these guys, even like Michael Floyd, he can get out there and lay a block on someone to open up a play. So those are things that we definitely need to have. And he did have the ankle injury, and hopefully that's something that might have to be careful with him in the spring a little bit, and make sure he's going to be healthy for us coming into the fall. But definitely another good get. 6 foot 210 out of Austintown, Ohio. Second team honors in Ohio for the AP. So, and that was as a linebacker. So definitely a good skill set, and somebody who can make an impact early on.
Yeah, I'm going to take a second and go ahead and plug that I've started laying on these radio shows over YouTube, and the one I'm doing for this show is going to be pretty cool. So we're talking about the highlights, and I have highlights of every single commit. And I'm moving into William Mahone. His highlight reel is very impressive too. And we talked about the kind of backs they're going to move into. I think that of the 3 coming in, he's the clear-cut leader, as a guy I think that could put on another 15, 20, 25 pounds over his career and become that power back. And he runs with a very nice aggression, and he's physical. But he also, at the high school level, he did have that breakaway speed, and he could get away from everybody on the field. And, he will team with Kivari Russell, and they're both going to get a chance to get significant minutes and touch the ball this year. So he is an elite prospect, and like Tim said, he is pretty funny to follow on Twitter. I actually had to unfollow his retweeting because he's a retweeting king, but he does tweet a lot of great stuff, and he is fully on board of becoming a part of the Notre Dame program. It's definitely a guy that's excited to be, moving into the prestige and everything involved with blue and gold Notre Dame football. He's just a guy you want to have in the class, and the guy that's going to, have a positive attitude at all times. And like you said, he's trying to recruit one of the top running backs in the country to come with him to Notre Dame. He's a guy that wants to win. At the end of the day, Notre Dame class, if you want to talk about guys, they're bringing in guys who are athletes, and they're bringing in guys that want to be there and they want to win. And that's all you can ask for at this point. So William Mahone, check him out on YouTube when we post the show. He's got very impressive highlight reel.
Very much so, and I'm looking forward to doing that with seeing you do that, Steve. I thought your first one was really good. Guys, let's go ahead and get to our wide receivers here. We had a couple in this class. And the one that I want to point out first is Chris Brown, because Coach Kelly in his press conference today talked a lot about Chris Brown being really this underrated player. He, said that he's that guy that, if I'm a general manager, this is my steal in the NFL draft. He has a great jumping ability. He's 6'2". He's listed as a 3-star from South Carolina. He's a guy Jason pointed out earlier in the show, but he's a guy I'm excited to have here, and he's another guy I can add to that list of potential return specialists.
Yeah, he definitely has that ability. He ran track in high school also. well, I mean, looking at some of the stats here, and some of the information. As you said on the kick game, he had more than 450 kick return yards in 2009 alone. So he can definitely run with the ball. He may be a little bit overlooked by some, but 2010 he had over 1,100 yards on 52 receptions. He did miss some of his 2011 season due to a broken collarbone. But yeah, again, another guy who can immediately make an impact on special teams and even maybe get some reps as probably not as a starter in 2012, but definitely probably going to see some playing time, I would imagine. So yeah, again, 29th ranked receiver nationally, and that's by Super Prep. So yeah, he's got a lot of upside, a lot of potential. Again, another guy I think you'd like to see some weight put on him and physically develop, but obviously that'll happen over time. So that's going to be exciting to see him out there too.
Yeah, I think that Chris Brown kind of falls into the category of a lot of commits that he committed early. He stuck with it. There was not a single rumor at any point in the last couple of months that he was considering anyone else. He was solid Irish all the way, and he kind of flew under the radar while people got amped up over guys making decisions late and stuff like that. And Brian Kelly said it himself today. I think that he's one of the sleepers of this class, and if there was an NFL draft, he'd be one of those guys that you were ecstatic to you because you got him so late. And he is a impressive athlete. I believe it was that Keith Arnold said he actually, as a junior in high school, he's one of the top triple jumpers in America. And he was 4 inches as a junior in high school from breaking the Big East record. So he might be joining some of the other guys on Notre Dame right now, the Atkinson twins and Bennett Jackson on that Notre Dame track team in the spring, and maybe be shattering records in the springtime and hopefully going after some of them in the fall too. We talked about, the receiver we didn't get, but this is one of those guys who's got that long, lean, athletic frame, and he projects as that outside receiving threat that this offense really wants and needs. And I don't know, you're coming off the injury and stuff like that. He may not play a role significantly in 2012, but it wouldn't shock me if he did. He's got the prototype, big-time wide receiver skills. He's got the height and a few more pounds this summer, and he might just be in that perfect prototype already. So, a very impressive athlete, another guy with a really good film, and make sure you check him out.
And, just to point out past history, having a wide receiver at Notre Dame with the last name Brown doesn't really ever hurt.
Now, that's a solid name to have, and if he even comes close to the numbers and stuff that Timmy did, that would be okay in my book.
Couldn't help but agree there. Maybe when Goodman graduates after next season, maybe we can get Chris to wear 81. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, let's just try to keep him from being like the musician Chris Brown and doing all those roundhouse kicks and when he dances. I don't know what's up with that, but let's hope he's not like that.
I wouldn't be surprised with athletic ability if he probably was a good dancer, but I'm not going to concern myself with those skills right now.
No, we'll take what we can get on the football field. If maybe exactly. So let's just worry about football.
Well, let's get back to it, guys. Justin Ferguson is the other big-name wide receiver coming into Notre Dame. Steve pointed out that ESPN actually had Justin Ferguson rated higher than Deontay Greenberry. The thing about Ferguson you need to know, he's a very physical guy. He's a specialist, really, in yards after the catch. When he gets his hands on the ball, if you give this guy some open space, he's gonna kill you. If you only have one guy on him and he gets past him, you don't stand a chance against this guy with just a safety. He has the ability where he might even be able to run over you. He's going to get around you, and it's a guy that I'm not going to say is going to be the next Michael Floyd because there's very few guys that are Michael Floyd, but it's a guy who's going to be very talented at the university.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes out of Pembroke Pines, Florida, where I actually got to play golf many years ago, so I know the area. I've been there a few times. He definitely brings something to the table for us. In 2009, he recorded 527 yards on 29 passes for 9 touchdowns. So those are good numbers. His team had a 6-4 record, so that's could be kind of deceiving. But yes, he's definitely. Well, in 2010, he almost had 1,000 yards on 44 passes, or 44 completions and 12 touchdowns. So he's a good size, 6'2", 205. That's not necessarily the height of Michael Floyd, but the body mass is there, and definitely a good player for us. So it's very excited to see that. That's one thing that I think we talked about that before, where you might not necessarily have the next Michael Floyd, hiding there and on the roster or with the recruits right now, but what we do have are very, very capable wide receivers who you can rotate in and out, and in certain packages you can put many of them on the field, and you force the defense to cover them all. You're not gonna be able to just double cover a guy, because if you double cover that guy, you got another really good wide receiver out there that's going to make you pay for it. So yeah, it's definitely exciting to have a good stable wide receivers out there that can pose a threat to any defense.
Yeah, you said it best, Tim. You're looking at his film. He breaks a lot of tackles, and he makes a lot of guys miss in space. And he's definitely a guy. I mean, I'm not going to ready to predict without seeing him in the fall ball. But I think one of the two, between Justin Ferguson and Chris Brown, is going to exit camp, and there's going to be a lot of buzz around one of them, getting playing time early on, because they're both very talented. And you said his height and weight, if they're accurate at what they're listed online, which is 6'1", 205, in that range. I mean, he's going to fit into that role where he's going to be with Alford, and there's going to be the slot receivers and the running backs getting coached in the same spots all the time. He's a guy you want to get the ball in his hands in space, swing screens, and the quick wide receiver hitches and stuff like that, and let him make a play. And I think that he might start out his career on the inside of the offense, where they can move him around. He might even be taking handoffs, but he is definitely a guy to be excited about. He also slipped under the radar. He was an early commit. He stuck with Notre Dame, no wavering, and he just didn't get a lot of height towards the end of the process, which is kind of the way it goes these days. And you watch his tape, and one of the Florida scouting services says, that he has a skill set that nobody in Florida has, which if they're saying that about a guy in Florida, that guy is a super elite prospect. So definitely a guy that fits into the mold of the player that the Brian Kelly offense wants, and worth keeping your eye on. He's a guy that could make an impact early.
And one other name that's currently on the roster you got to take in with Brown and Ferguson is DeVaris Daniels. DeVaris is a guy that has a lot of skills too. If you remember when he committed last year, he was deciding between Notre Dame and Miami, and he was listed as an athlete because he could play wide receiver, he could play a little of a safety, he could play quarterback. So the athleticism that we're going to see from these three guys making their debuts in the field next year, or I should say possibly making their debuts next year. Yeah, it's very interesting. DeVaris is a guy that a lot of people, that Brian Kelly loves. And he's talked about a lot how hard he's worked and how good of a player he's been on the scout team. So those three guys, the future has to look bright at wide receiver for Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think that's like we said before, it's really important, especially in the spread offense, to be able to have a bunch of guys that you can definitely rely on to go out there and extend the field and be able to make a big play downfield and get the yards after the catch, and it's so definitely having all these guys in the wide receiver position is definitely a benefit to the program. It's it's really going to be interesting to see how Brian Kelly integrates all these guys into the system. Like you said, you're not necessarily going to see them all next year, but I think you're going to see quite a few of these guys in there. And then you still got you got Robbie Tomey, you got TJ. There's big playmakers out there that are really still developing and still with some more playing time and everything else and learning the system. You're going to have a lot of guys out there that can do a lot of damage. So, it's going to be really interesting to see. And we've got some guys on, as running backs that are going to help us in that category too. And being able to rotate these guys in and keep fresh legs on the field for 60 minutes is definitely a benefit. I mean, if you got two backs or two or three receivers, it keeps them on the field more. But if you can rotate in, five guys in that category, then you're definitely doing yourself nothing but favors. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, one of the key aspects of bringing in both these guys are wide receivers. They're both guys from the Deep South, and that's an area that Brian Kelly and the Notre Dame needs to be attacking at all times for the skill position, for the linemen, for everything. So it was a good get, and when you talk about the wide receivers position as a whole, Toma and Jones are kind of the proven commodities, and John Goodman's the guy that's going to come back, and we're going to see if he can fulfill some of the prospects that were laid out when he came on board for the local kids. But you got to keep your eye on DeVaris Daniels, and Daniel Smith is another one of those big athletic receivers who's going to have a say in this competition, and he's going to have another spring ball under his belt when they head to camp next year. So these guys are athletes, and it's that you want to have athletes on the field. You want to have guys that you want to get the ball in their hands and make plays. So definitely the receiver position got stocked up this offseason with this recruiting class, and it's something that may become a bigger strength in the next year or two, as opposed to just the really big-time Floyd and Eifert who dominated the receiving categories for the whole year. So, I feel a lot better about the class going in, and I'm excited for them. So good stuff.
Yeah, so that touches up on the wide receivers, quarterbacks, and running backs. We got about 15 minutes till our next guest comes on. So let's go ahead and finish up the offense here. We'll go to the line where we have some three very skilled players coming in. One guy that we're going to point out first before we get to the bigger names is Mark Harrell. Mark Harrell, when I took my notes, I think the best way to describe him from watching his film was really just saying, his versatility at the best on the offensive line. The reason why I say that is, during his time in high school, at times he would line up as a tight end, he would line up as a tackle, and he'd line up as a center. So he moved all along the line there. And, he's a guy that you've kind of heard say is kind of the diamond in the rough, very skilled, and is not the huge name like the other guys we have coming to this offensive line. But it's a guy that Coach Keller's really excited about, and it's a guy definitely worth giving some notice.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned about him being able to move all around the line is very important. And he comes in at 6'5", 270 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. His team, he played for Catholic High School in North Carolina, or Charlotte there. He helped his team to average 333 rushing yards and 43 points a game in 2011. So you got a guy that's able to open holes for you and help that spread offense run the ball too. So when you got a guy like that out there, he's got good size. He can, he's going to be fast off the ball, or fast off the line, I should say. And when you're able to, obviously it's a good thing to be able to run the football. It opens up your passing game, and it's definitely a good get for us. Again, he's probably going to be a guy that's going to be developed over, probably not see much of him in the first season, but as a sophomore, I think that's a guy who can make an impact going forward, and he's definitely a good get, and it's one of those guys that you want to be able to see our offensive line continue to develop as it has, and that's a guy who can definitely be a big impact player on the line in the future.
You didn't ask, because it was such you to ask us who we thought our sleepers in this class were, and I was going to put him up there 1A or 1. This kid's film is, it's a combination of it's a good film because it has good camera angles, good lighting, and it's pretty close shot to him. This guy is an athlete. Seriously, this guy is getting out in space. He locks on the defenders. He's got a mix of nasty in him. I love this guy's film, and I'm going to, be a little more biased. I'm an offensive lineman by trade. And I was just really impressed the first couple times I looked at him. I hadn't looked at it until the last week. And, wow, this guy is very athletic. And there's a lot of times you see him driving his man 5, 7, 8 yards down the field and finishing him off. And one of my favorite things when you watch a guy in a true pancake block isn't just where the guy trips or whatever, but you're 5, 10 yards past the line of scrimmage and you flip over him because you push him so hard your body flips up, and you can see the lineman's legs flip up in the air as he rolls over a guy. He just absolutely bulldozed. And this guy had a couple of those on his film, and I'd make sure you check it out when you're watching the video. And I'll put him as a sleeper. I think that he's probably 2 years away as well. He's going to have to put on some weight, but we didn't bring a center in the last class, and he's really the only guy that projects from the interior line at all in this class. So there's going to be a space there where he's going to get a chance to compete at guard or at center in the next 2 years. So keep your eye on him. You know, he's going to be in the background for probably a year, maybe two. But this guy, I think, is going to has a chance to play and be very good.
Well, Steve, I was kind of saving the sleeper part for a little bit into the show, but I know when we get down to mine, I'll release that, I think. But yeah, you're right, man. This guy, I mean, we made a clue of versatility. He is great. I mean, like you said in this film, it was really impressive how he just destroyed people. He just got off the line so well. I think that's a huge thing. Another name of a very athletic offensive line, Jaron Jones. This guy is huge, very athletic, has a lot of strength. I mean, one thing that's to stick to his athleticism is his most recent high school basketball game. He had a triple-double, and it wasn't points, rebounds, and assists or points, rebounds, steals. It was points, rebounds, and 11 blocks. Now, if you have a guy who has 11 blocks, we got to find a way to get this guy on the field goal team, get him a few blocks, get his hand up there. A guy that I know a lot of people are really excited. He is an ESPN 150 recruit, and the sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah, number 20 player nationally from Tom Lennick and Max Preps. Yeah, a couple block kicks this year, or block field goal attempts. I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely a standout defensive lineman. Played at Aquinas Institute in Rochester, New York. He's just looking at his numbers, and again, I didn't get a lot of chance. I didn't get hardly any chance to look at any highlight reels this week, so I'm just kind of going off of what I've got here in front of me. You know, his junior year in high school was really good. You know, even his senior year was outstanding as well. But you know, he's good at you know, forcing fumbles. Had 4 of them in 2010. 68 tackles, 32 unassisted, 14 for loss, 10 sacks on his own. So even the interception. So you got a guy who, you know, at 6'6", 298, he can get in the face and he can get a hand up and definitely makes it, you know, wreak some havoc. You know, I don't see him as, you know, being a guy who's necessarily going to have the speed to get in and really force the quarterback a lot, but you know, we've got guys on the outside who are able to do that too. So yeah, definitely a good get, a big guy, you know, a lot of skills. So it's definitely a good thing for us on the defensive line.
Yeah, it's really great actually. The very first highlight on his reel is he's playing defense, and it's they're running a screenplay, and the quarterback tries to get the ball above his massive 6'7" frame with probably a 40-inch wingspan, and he actually tips the ball up in the air and then tips it to himself and has a one-handed catch, and he breaks about 3 tackles or runs for about 20 yards, and you're sitting there going, this is a 300-plus pound 6'7" man, and it's very impressive, and he's got that athletic ability, and it's just interesting with the massive size of these guys that Brian Kelly's bringing in, and he's projecting, I believe, for now at the defensive line, but he was actually graded out as a top offensive tackle. But just the sheer size that he can combine with when you go on the front 7, if you're lining up, you know, him and Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt and Nicholas, and I mean, just the bodies they're going to be able to put out there if he's out there on the defensive line is just a wall, and it's exciting to think about. And he's definitely a guy that I would put in the category as I would be more surprised if he had a lot of playing time this year. I think he's probably got another year to get into a better program, get a little more flexibility and strength. But this guy could be an absolute terror down the line. So a huge get coming out of upstate New York, and definitely a lineman that's going to figure into Brian Kelly's plans in the future, and we'll figure out if that's offensively or defensively.
And the last guy we have here on the offense on the line here is Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie is a very gifted athlete. His feet is what impressed me most from his highlights. He was really good at getting up off the line. He moved his feet very well. And the way that Coach Kelly really described him was, this is my ideal left tackle. And, you know, Brian Kelly, obviously, he's been around this game quite a few times. He knows how to bring these guys in. And I couldn't help but agree. I think this is one guy that is, you know, going to be a great left tackle. And if you were following the suspense today on Twitter, he was one guy that had everybody's heart beating pretty quick after the whole Greenberry controversy.
I'm really high on Ronnie Stanley. I think he's going to be a great addition to the program. Comes out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman High School, 6'6", 285. Again, you got another big guy that's that's along the lines of a Prince Shembo, who the program is really high on. And it's obviously not the same side of the ball, but still, you got that big guy, you got the speed, you got the intangibles of this guy. 15th best offensive tackle in the nation by rivals. I've seen some tape of this kid. He's really good. He's going to develop into a great offensive lineman. So it's really going to be great to see what comes out of him in the next few years. I'm very excited about this one. He definitely had me a little nervous this morning too. So glad that he went ahead and came on board with us. It's definitely good for the program.
Yeah, it might have been a little bit of paranoia. I felt the way that he made his decision and the way that he talked about the program and different things that you get from Twitter that I felt he was pretty solid with Notre Dame. I wasn't overly worked up about him. And with the upset, I think Greenberry, everyone talked for months that he was on the fence. So you guys mentioned it. Definitely very athletic. He's another guy like Jerron Jones. He's playing basketball, excelling. And I think an important aspect of it is that he's coming out of Bishop Gorman down there in Nevada, a Las Vegas suburb. And that school has really become a very dominant school in basketball and football. And bringing a guy out of that school, out of the West Coast, Pac-12 country, and, closer to some of those Big 12 powers, that's a really big get. And you talk a lot about getting into programs, and you get into the elite programs, and he comes to Notre Dame, and he has success, or he loves the program, he goes back and talks to his friends. That's really what it's about, is getting into those bigger programs. They pump out the D1 recruits, and they have a guy to talk to and say, I love South Bend. I love playing for Brian Kelly. I love the offense and things like that. So it's a double bonus in being an elite player out of an elite high school, and something that really hopes it pays dividends moving forward, because there's going to be more guys coming out of that school that'll be on the Irish radar in coming years. So great get, another guy that you think you would guess he's got a year or two with the tackle positions the way it's lined up before we're going to hear a lot about him, but somebody that we'll be talking about during camp because he is impressive.
And guys, that moves us to the other side of the ball. We're now going to talk a little bit with you guys about the defensive linemen, the linebackers. The first name we can talk about is Romeo Okwara. And what's really cool about this guy is he hasn't played football for a long time. I think that it was like 6-7 years. He's a good linebacker, defensive end with great size. He's the guy that everyone's saying is going to be the skill player that impacts the team most as a freshman. And what's really cool about his situation is he's going to have some familiarity because he comes from the same high school as Prince Shembo. These guys know each other really well. Prince Shembo obviously being a starting linebacker for this team. And this is a guy, he's a four-star athlete, four-star linebacker, and I'm really excited to see this guy play.
Yeah, you got a guy 6'4", 240 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2011, he had 76 tackles, 14 sacks, 27 for a loss, and that's with 18 quarterback pressures, 3 pass breakups as well, and a field goal block. So you got a total package there, a guy who can do a lot of stuff. And yeah, definitely good to have him there with Prince Shembo, and it's going to be interesting to see what he can do right off the bat. He can definitely come in as a freshman and do some great things for the team. So really, it kind of reminds me of an Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt type guy who's got the speed to get into the backfield and be able to get past guys fairly easily, and put a move on an offensive lineman to get to the quarterback. And obviously that's very important when you put pressure on the quarterback. It forces them into bad decisions. So obviously that's a really good thing for us. So definitely going to be excited to see what he can do right off the bat.
Yeah, he's definitely the body type and then the skill set you see filling out these elite SEC defenses right now, especially the Alabamas and LSUs. I mean, my favorite part about him on film was his best film is actually the All-Star game, the North Carolina All-Star game, and he is, wrecking everybody he comes up against, and he's throwing quarterbacks down without abandon and it was fun to watch. He's very athletic, and it's going to be one of those guys like some of the redshirt freshmen from this year where it's going to be interesting to see the way that he fills out 6'4", 240, if he's going to put on some weight and become, the hand-down defensive end, or if he's going to, utilize all that athletic ability and quickness and stay out over at the dog or the cat linebacker and, be coming off the edge and also being able to work in space. But he's the type of guy that Brian Kelly's been talking about in his defense, is that big skill guy, the guy that can move around and be disruptive all over the field. So I'm not as certain that he'll be an impact player this year. I wouldn't be surprised, but that position is just overly stocked with these massive athletes. So it will be fun to watch, and he's going to have to fight for it if he's going to get there, but he's got all the skills in the world.
Yeah, and that's a guy that, you got to keep an eye out. Another guy you got to keep an eye out for is Sheldon Day. Sheldon Day was the second-rated state player in the state of Indiana behind, obviously, Notre Dame quarterback Gunnar Kiel. He's a good pass rusher. He's a ESPN 150 guy. But, guys, when I see Sheldon Day and I watch his film, the one thing I think, disruptive.
Yeah, you got a 6'2", 275 out of Warren Central in Indianapolis here in Indiana. Yeah, very impressive. He's another guy who can get to the quarterback. He caused a lot of disruption in the backfield. Had 9 sacks in 2011. Runner-up for Mr. Football in Indiana for 2011. So you got a guy there that 18th best defensive tackle in the nation by rivals. So you got a lot of upside to this guy. Another guy who I love to see guys who can get pressure on the quarterback and just get back there and disrupt the whole game plan and force him into some wacky situations back there. So definitely a good get. I'm really high on Sheldon Day. I think that's good. That's a great get for us. Obviously he's going to. All these guys are going to need to develop some, but 6'2", 275. You got a pretty big guy there, so definitely going to be interested to see what he does. And I don't know if necessarily you're going to see him start off, but definitely for the program going forward, these are the kind of guys that we need in there to rotate them in after our other guys come in. So definitely a good get for us. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, the more that Brian Kelly's there, the more just completely stacks up this front seven, and he's going to join.
Yeah, I'm here.
Keep going, guys. Sorry.
Oh, are we taking a call, or is that our guest?
It's our guest.
Oh, okay.
Is this Brandon?
It is, yeah. Sorry about that, Tim. How you doing?
Good, man. Sorry about all that.
No worries. Happy signing day, gentlemen. Continue on if you need to.
Oh, no, man. We'll go ahead and get the interview in. We've got as much time as we need. Well, guys, let's go ahead and welcome Brandon Crouch and Frank Corrigan to the show from Dream of the Echoes. These guys have a really cool idea. If you haven't heard about it, what these guys are doing is writing these books. And it's a series of books they're starting about the story of Notre Dame. And I'll go ahead and pass on the story you guys. Give us a little more about it. I didn't want to steal your thunder there. What else can you tell everybody about the Dream of the Echoes series?
Well, first of all, thanks, guys, for having us on. We really appreciate it. This is obviously one of the most important days of the year, really, as Notre Dame fans getting new guys on the roster. So we really appreciate the time you give us. Basically our idea is to try to help pass on some of these great legendary Notre Dame football stories to just onto the next generation, and some of the stories that we all grew up hearing about from maybe our parents or reading about and learning about. So, our mission is to kind of take these legends and put them in a nice package for kids, kind of add maybe a little bit of an angle or a fairy tale type side to them, and just kind of make it overall a very fun and interactive experience for both, Notre Dame fans, the parents, and the children that are involved. And,
like I said, you guys were very polite and sent me a copy of the first book, being The Four Horsemen of Notre Dame, and I'm really appreciative of it. I really enjoyed it, even at my age. It's something I have a little nephew. I look forward to reading as he gets older to him. How did you guys really get into the idea of developing these characters, such as, the Theo and Eddie J characters, What really brought in the influence of those characters?
Frank, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think the original idea, Brandon came up with the original idea of creating a children's book that talked about some of these different football games. And I think one of the things that we were looking as we got further along into the project, you try to guard against, you want to tell the stories, you want to be accurate about what happens, but at the same time you want to guard against too much of it was 3rd down and 16 and, the quarterback dropped back to pass and they got the first down. So a lot of that, as we got further along into the project, we thought, what if we created, characters, and what if the characters were a boy and his dog, or who can't relate to a boy and their dog, and I think that we thought that'd be a good place to start. As the idea grew, we kind of got a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, I guess creative, or trying to think of some different things, and we thought maybe we'd flash the boy and his dog back in time and see the games live in person and have them interact with the characters. So I think the creation of the characters, Theo and Eddie J, just kind of provided an avenue for us to do some different things, kind of put everything in a fairy tale quality, rather than strictly a narrative about what happened in a particular game. And if it's a fairy tale quality, we thought the kids would really kind of bond with that. It gives the parents, maybe it's a little more fun for the parents to read, and then we all accomplish our goal of brainwashing, future Notre Dame fans. So that was kind of the genesis of that whole idea.
If I could jump in here, this is Steve, guys. Where is the inspiration for the names of the two, fantasy characters, Theo and Eddie J?
Yeah.
One of the big reasons I want to ask is because my best friend of my entire childhood was named Eddie Joe, and I got a huge kick out of this when I saw the media back in the night. I posted it on his Facebook wall, and you're not going to believe this, but go ahead and let us know where the inspiration comes from.
Well, what's interesting about this is as we were collaborating on this creatively, it was actually Frank's idea to start incorporating, the boy and the dog. And at first, I just didn't really picture how they would fit into what we were trying to do. And we were kind of trying to tell these stories. And it all makes sense now, but back before this was really, on pen and paper, it didn't make sense to me. And I kind of slept on it, and I realized there was a way to kind of maybe weave them into the Notre Dame lore themselves, and we came up with some iconic names for them. Theo is sort of, named after Theodore Hesburgh. Very, very iconic character. Character is probably really a derogatory comment to Father Hesburgh, but I mean, respectfully, we named him after Father Hesburgh, and then who was Father Hesburgh's sidekick throughout his reign was Edmund Joyce, so we kind of shortened that to Eddie J. So we look for ways in all of these stories to sort of put maybe like a little bit of an inside joke or teachable moments for parents to, beyond what's just on the page, to be able to help, educate kids a little bit further into the Notre Dame spirit, the Notre Dame, traditions and such. So we thought, I'm glad you asked that question because it's not something that we really advertise, but it's fun to be able to talk about that a little bit.
But if you want it to be after your friend, we'd be happy to go along with that. But we don't want to disappoint your friend.
No, yeah, I'll send him a link to the radio show, but we'll see how far he gets into it. He's not a big Notre Dame fan, but I got a huge kick out of saying that Eddie J was one of the characters, and that just really got me going. I'll go ahead and ask the next question. My actual fandom started I grew up in California, and I took a family trip to South Bend, and I met Lou Holtz, and he actually stopped and talked to me, and it was a life-changing moment for me. And I noticed he's prominently featured in the book. So has he been a part of the project in any way, or is he aware of what's going on?
Yeah, he is. And that's the upcoming book. The second book of the series is coming out. I guess it's going to be Brandon, sometime in March. I guess maybe late March. And that the upcoming book features Lou Holtz pretty prominently. And not to give anything away. At this point, I think a lot of people do know it's going to be the Notre Dame versus Miami game in 1988. And so we did reach out to Coach Holtz. We from kind of a legal licensing standpoint, we are using his likeness in the book, and in order to do that, we seek the person out and get permission to do that. We are cartooning, whatever the right word is there, but cartooning the characters a little bit, and he's been very supportive, and we actually sent the manuscript to him of the second book, and he seemed to get a kick out of it. So much that we asked him if we could, maybe use a little. He kind of wrote a little blurb back to us, and that will be on the cover of the back cover of the book. So yes, he's been very supportive and helpful, and like you, I grew up. Brandon and I speak for both of us. The bottom line for us is we're just huge Notre Dame football fans that happen to be writing some books. I as a kid, my father went to Notre Dame. I grew up with the fight song when I was 6 months old. My mom still tells stories of him, prancing me around the room before I could even talk. So he started that process very, very early. So I grew up loving Notre Dame, and of course, my formative years when I was at Notre Dame, when Brandon was at Notre Dame, Lou Holtz was our coach, and those were great years. So I can relate to what you're saying about meeting him, and he was kind of my guy. I grew up with Holtz and loved his football teams, loved the way they played. So it was very exciting for us to have him involved in this book and to be supportive.
And really, it's our hope that if you look at this next story we have coming out, like Frank said, is about the 1988 Notre Dame Miami game, and you can imagine us when we made the decision to go forward with the story. We're telling a story of a football game that consists of fumbles, interceptions, 2-point conversions, and how do you tell that story to 2 to 7-year-olds? It's pretty complicated if you leave it to football. So once again, we had to find an angle, and in kind of doing some research on the game and how we were going to approach it from a children's book standpoint, you watch the game start to finish, and there's an interview right after the game's over between Holtz and John Dockery, the sideline reporter, and Dockery says, Coach, hey, great game. How did you do it? How did you pull it off? And the first thing Lou Holtz says, he says, this game was won by the Notre Dame spirit. And as we watched that, it just dawned on us, there's our angle. And so we developed some things in the story to kind of, personify the Notre Dame spirit. And, sort of in the end, Theo and Eddie J realized that that's really the true hero of the game. And, our secret hope is that, when Coach, sees the book in its completed form, that he says, yeah, that's what I was talking about. That's Notre Dame spirit, and at least to the extent that he'd be proud to tell his grandkids the story.
Now, guys, this is Tim back here. I'm kind of curious, the great thing you guys do is, you're telling the story of Notre Dame, which is, really, for better or worse, the ultimate, either you love this team or you hate this team. There's no other way around it. It's really the best way you can look at it.
Right.
One cool thing is, you had to pitch this idea, and Limerick Publishing was the group that picked up the publishing for that. If you guys can, both go ahead on the insight. Tell us what it was like when you pitched this idea to them and what their thoughts were.
Well, we actually created that company. So Limerick Publishing is our company. It's a company that we created. So we're actually self-publishing the book ourselves, right? However, we did have to pitch the idea to the University of Notre Dame. So one of the big decisions that Brandon and I had to make early on was, how are we going to, whether you can do it 2 different ways. You can either write a book and not get it licensed, right? Have the symbol and the kind of backing and support of the university, or you go through the proper avenues and get your idea sold. Have them buy into the idea and like the idea. University of Notre Dame, that is, and say, hey, we want you all to do this. This would be a great thing. So we decided early on to go ahead and go through the proper channels, get licensed, and be able to use the University of Notre Dame's name and logo and the power of that brand, right? So we did go back to the university and say, this is the idea. We're going to create characters. We're going to flash them back in time. They're going to interact with these legendary characters of Notre Dame lore, and what do you all think? And they're pretty excited about the idea. I think they thought it was something that was unique and different. And again, just helping pass these stories on from generation to generation, I think that they were pretty excited about it. So pitching it to them was challenging, but also it was fun. And again, their reaction was very. It gave us a lot of confidence going forward that we were going to have some success with this.
All right, here's another question, guys.
Sure.
You have the specific games that you've written about in events for Notre Dame football. So, hoping this series gets to keep moving forward, what's your favorite Notre Dame game or play that you haven't written about yet in this series?
That's a good question. You may go, Brandon. Notre Dame Miami 1988 to me is a game I really remember the most. To me, it's the modern era game, right? It's the one that I was just a kid, but we had the 5 years in the 80s that were pretty tough, and I remember as a kid my dad being pretty I want to say miserable during those 5 years, and then Coach Holt came along, and I think that to me was kind of the comeback, right? The kind of return of glory for us. And that game, I remember that I couldn't even watch a 2-point conversion. I was running back and forth between the rooms. I was trying to. I don't really know why. I guess I was just a nervous kid. And I didn't want to see it. I wanted to see it, but I didn't want to see it. And then back and forth. And that game, I still remember almost like it was yesterday, even though it was almost 25 years later. I think besides that game, for me anyway, there's so many of them. My freshman year was Notre Dame versus Florida State, and the game of the century back then with Kevin McDougal on our team, and then we had Charlie Ward and all the guys on the Florida State team. I think that's a big game, but there's just so many. I mean, you got so many in the 70s that were classic games. Notre Dame, Alabama, the Sugar Bowl, of course, the Joe Montana, Houston, the Cotton Bowl. So there's a lot of them. But I would say for me anyway, just the ones that I can really remember in my lifetime, it'd be the one that we haven't done yet would be Notre Dame and Florida State.
Yeah,
I don't know, Brandon.
You kind of stole my thunder there, Frank, just because I think being at that football game, I was in school at the time, and actually I was in the marching band, so I was on the field when that final play happened. We batted down I couldn't even see the play happen. I just remember the roar of the stadium, and it's just whether or not we get to that particular game in the series, I don't know, but just my favorite game is just I just remember that like it's no other. I just remember peculiar things about it, the way the air felt, the way the campus felt the week before, and the build-up, the Florida State players showing up in green hats with their FS logo on there, and sort of just walking in there with a swagger, not knowing what was coming to them. It's just an incredible week, great atmosphere, what Notre Dame football is all about. I would definitely point to that game, too. It's my personal favorite that we haven't tackled yet.
I can promise you we're never going to write about the game that followed that game. So, that's a promise.
Yeah. I'm on board with you guys there. That's the game that definitely, I'm a couple of years younger than you guys. That's the game I remember more than anything, the Pats being batted down and just going crazy in my house. But, wow, I mean, that game changed everything for me, and I've always said for a long time that Kevin McDougal was my favorite Notre Dame player ever, and that team in general was just ridiculously stacked with future All-Pros and NFL players. So,
McDougal was great.
Next question, Tim.
Yeah,
I was going to say McDougal was great. Oh, sorry.
I just have a couple more, but then I'll let Steve close out if he has any. One cool thing about your books, and I loved, is the illustration in there, and that was done by Nicola Capuano. How was it getting her on board? And when she turns it over to you guys and says, "Hey, I'm done. What do you guys think of the drawings?" Is it ever in awe just how great it's there? I mean, her drawing of New Rockne in the first book's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nicolette is actually, Frank mentioned earlier, not to bore you with any business details, but I mean, we did self-publish this, and we did so just from the aspect of it was probably the quickest way to bring the idea to market rather than going around and pitching it, and certainly with the longevity of the project, we thought that was going to be best. Well, Nicolette is actually my sister-in-law. So I have a personal connection to her, but she's also a third business partner in on this. So, she has an investment. I mean, she clearly invests a lot of time in this. I mean, I don't know that anybody realizes how long it takes for somebody to illustrate and color a 32-page children's book to the extent that she does. I mean, it's literally, it's a full color page with bleed, and it's she literally spends wall to wall about 2 to 3 months exclusively on the project. So it's a huge time commitment for her, but clearly worthwhile. She's very talented. She's involved. She owns her own mural design company, and so she's involved in things like restoring old historic hotels, going into businesses and doing, just extravagant mural work. So, again, she's obviously very, very talented. I think what she's done with Theo and Eddie J, as well as the characters that we all know, the Four Horsemen, New Rockney, Lou Holtz, et cetera, it's just we've been very, very happy with. Having said that, there's sort of a back and forth process too, which she'll come to us, and Frank and I were just talking about this the other day. When you start refining, we're the football guys. Nicolette is not she's not a Notre Dame person, nor is she really a football person. So there's a lot of translation that has to happen between our idea and what we know, and then to her. And finding the balance is to be able to draw out her creativity in the project, and having her come up with her own ideas, because she's got some great ideas in terms of perspective. And like Frank said, we're thinking in terms of, hey, where's the ball position, where's the goal line, et cetera, but she comes up with some really off-the-wall stuff that just works great for kids.
Yeah, and it's cool. I think just to kind of build on that real quick, there is a very, very much a Walt Disney or a Pixar type quality to her work. I think we get those comments quite a bit. We've done a handful of signings last year with the first book, and we've got a couple lined up. The Blue and Gold game, spring game, different things that we'll be doing as far as book signings. And people come to our tables, mention all the time this kind of Walt Disney, very endearing illustrations that she can bring. And for me anyway, it's almost like Christmas Day. I can barely draw a stick figure and maybe pull up a smiley face. That's the extent of my drawing ability. And then she comes back with these things. I may have a vision in my head of what I think is going to happen in this, and a lot of times it's complete different in a very good way. So it's pretty cool from our end to see that you come back to us from somebody who's actually a legitimate, very creative artist. And,
we know we have the Miami book coming out, which I just posted actually the YouTube trailer you guys made. I posted that in our chat room for everyone to see. That book's coming out short. And then not to get too far ahead, I know you got to go through your press promoting that book. Do you have an idea of where you're going after that? Could we see possibly the book of the 1977 Cotton Bowl, Joe Montana getting the chicken noodle soup before the game? Is there an idea of where you go after that?
Certainly we've kicked around, the probably several ideas that people can think of off the top of their head in terms of these legendary Notre Dame football games. We haven't made a decision on what the next one would be. Truthfully, it's tough for us to do more than one a year from a time standpoint. I told you, it takes Nicolette a good 2 to 3 months, and typically there's some behind the scenes things that we have to do with the licensing group at Notre Dame, but luckily, as Notre Dame fans, we have a lot to choose from in terms of historic games. So, and honestly, and I say this truthfully, this isn't a project that that's going to make us millions and we're going to retire on. But we do, in order to keep the project going, we need to be able to sustain itself. We need to be able to sell books. Because we don't sell books, then we don't have a chance to produce more of them. So if it might sound like a shameless plug, but for anybody that does have kids and they're looking for a way to get them, familiar with the Notre Dame culture, to help train them to be little Notre Dame fans, we think this is a great way, and we hope that you'll at least come to the website, check us out, come see us at book signings, and see what we're all about.
Yeah, and it's exciting so far. I think, the reaction that we've gotten back from people is very exciting. Notre Dame fan base is loyal and also very generous and like you said earlier, it's a love and hate thing. We're fortunate to a large extent as Notre Dame fans, because a lot of people love Notre Dame and across the country and across the globe. So I think people I think people really like, number one, the illustrations. They love the stories. They like the fact that it flashes back in time and kind of puts a clever twist to some things. We hear a lot of times that the parents like the fact that it rhymes. All the stories rhyme, so it keeps the kids' attention and it bounces along. So, I think like Brandon was saying, we're pretty fortunate that there's a lot of games to choose from. I think that he and I decided pretty early on the first book would be about New Rotten and Four Horsemen. To me, it's kind of like if you're going to learn about the United States, history of the United States, you pretty much start with George Washington and the Founding Fathers. You start from there and you move on. From our standpoint, Rodney and the Four Horsemen, was just, Rodney was we owe a lot to what's going on now to what Rodney did back in the day, right? So that was kind of number one. And at that point, you can kind of bounce around. I mean, obviously you got the Holtz, as a legend. You got the Parsegan teams. You got the Lions teams. You got Lay's teams. So we're pretty fortunate. We have a lot to pick from.
That's true. That's very true. Actually, Brandon, one last question. You said you were a member of the Notre Dame marching band?
Yes, I was.
I actually had a good buddy of mine. He graduated in the class of '98. That was the Notre Dame marching band. So there's that. It was about 2 years. Do you know a Duran Alexander?
Oh, yeah, of course I do. I think he was a freshman when I was a senior.
Duran's a very good friend of mine, actually.
Well, you have to tell him I said hi. I was the drum major my senior year, which was his freshman year, and he was one of my favorite people of all time. Just his spirit, his smile. He's an awesome kid. Make sure to tell him I said hello.
Yeah, I definitely will.
That's awesome.
That's very awesome. Small world.
Yeah. DA, we used to call him.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good brother at football, too. I don't know if a lot of people know about that.
No, good.
Yeah, well, Steve, do you have any more questions for him, guys? It's all yours, man.
I think I'm good, guys. I mean, I'm really excited to check this book out, and for anyone listening, I'm going to be posting this interview as well as the back half of tonight's show will be available on YouTube. Hopefully late tonight, but at latest tomorrow morning. I've got the YouTube clip of the book as well as a couple of the pages, so you can listen to them talk about the book and on the backstories and how they got involved in Notre Dame, and you can also watch at the same time. So make sure you guys check that out and you tell other people. So that should be up to hopefully tonight, but most likely tomorrow morning. I'll get the first half up early. But thanks for having you guys on.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excied to check it out.
Well, thank you very much. If people would like to learn more about those books, we got a website. It's www.dreamoftheechoes.com. We also have a Facebook with the same name. And, of course, the books are available at the Notre Dame bookstore locations as well as our website. So, thank you very much for this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.
You guys keep us posted on anything coming up. We'll be sure to promote it, especially we'll be throwing an event, the Blue Gold game. So just keep us posted.
Will do.
So good.
Hey, have a good night, guys.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very much.
Irish.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.
Well, Steve, I know we only got a few minutes left, but we can run over here. I know Jason, unfortunately, wasn't feeling well, so he closed out here. So, let's go ahead and run down the recruits here. We'll go ahead and get out here and call it a night.
Sounds good. Yeah, we're basically moving into the DBs at this point, which that's the heaviest part of the class, but there's some good ones.
Yeah, and, it was cool because when you said earlier that Mark Harrell was your sleeper, I was going to bring up C.J. Precise. Being that he's a very intelligent player, as you see. He has a lot of good instincts, really good in zone coverage, has a lot of ball skills. And then another name I was going to bring up is John Turner, just because if you're familiar with high school football, he's from Cathedral High School, which is a huge high school in Indiana State football.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was talking about online earlier with a couple other Notre Dame bloggers and stuff, that they're saying, oh, we needed a cornerback, we needed another receiver, is that we've got a lot of, very big athletes as far as for skill position players. All these guys are 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", and, they may be shifted around. Some of them might end up at safety, some might end up at corner, I think that Barati may even get a look at wide receiver with his skill set, but, Chris Brown and C.J. Procease are very, very athletic guys that definitely project out well as far as special teams right away. I mean, immediately, day one kickoff team, and they could be moving out on the edge of the defense and providing a lot of great skills. Like you said, they have ball skills, and I think these guys are even more than some of the linemen have a chance to play right away.
One thing we can point out about all these guys in this freshman secondary is they all have really good ball skills, and I'm really impressed with the way they all play in the zone coverage. One name especially you got to bring up is Elijah Shoemate, being, he is from Don Bosco. He's a guy we've talked about the past couple weeks in the show. Elijah really understands from his time there that, perfection is a must. And he knows where football and academics are all about and how important it is to keep those up. So, in a way, he's kind of the perfect breed to be a Notre Dame athlete.
Yeah, there's a reason that he's up there in the top 10 or 15 safeties in this class, depending on where you look. And I've said it a couple of times on the show, and I tell everyone that talks to me, you just cannot believe the intensity and the focus on detail that goes into prep at Don Bosco Prep in Jersey. It's really is not even below college programs. It's up there with college athletics. And I played Division I AA, and I'll say right now that they had more intense workouts oftentimes when I would drop in than anything I did in college, which, that just sounds ridiculous, but it's the honest truth. And they coach these kids up, and he is a guy that will come in and he will be, from a mental aspect, 100% ready to contribute immediately. And I love watching his film. He's super aggressive. He's very energetic on the field. He makes big plays, and he gets everyone around him jacked up to play ball. So he's a pure safety, I think, and he's a guy that will have a chance to compete for playing time on special teams immediately, if not in the dime and nickel packages in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and then another name we got to talk about here is Nick Baratti. Nick Baratti, what we can talk about is, we not to sound redundant with the other guys, talk about their ball skills, but he's very skilled there. And what I liked, as you pointed out earlier, is this guy was a guy that was, what can I do to help the team? I'll do it. Not only was he playing safety and tight end, but at times he was playing quarterback. Plus, he's he was a number one rated player in the state of Texas. Not number one overall rated player, but he was on the first all-state Texas team. So this is a guy who's a really interesting recruit, and see what he can do to help the team.
Yeah, he falls into that athlete category, and he may be asked to do some of the same things in college that he was done in high school, where much like a Bennett Jackson or an Austin Collinsworth, where you could see a position switch after year one. But with the loss of the receiver in this class and not getting any of the other wild cards at this point, I think that he might get a look at wide receiver this year. And they talked about his speed levels. He's sneaky fast. He could run. I've been told he runs in the low 4.4s, and it's just something you don't see with that body type. At 6'1", almost 200 pounds, this guy could be a real threat. And I think maybe down the road, if he's projecting a DB, he kind of projects more like a Zeke Mata type, that big athletic, rangy safety. But he's definitely a guy that the staff knows that they have options with, which is very valuable.
I completely agree. And, let's go ahead and take some time here. Let's talk about T. Shepard. This is a guy that we cannot go without talking. He was, according to ESPN, the 9th rated corner. But, if you talk to a lot of people, they'll tell you he's better than Tracy Howard, who's going to Miami as the number 1 rated corner. T, unfortunately, I think what hurt him was, he had to sit out last year due to some issues with transferring. I know Coach called him the top corner in the nation. And he's another guy that's going to be supporting, he's an early enrollee supporting number 1. T is it's a great story, just because he has had a lot of, with the hearing impaired issues and how great of a football player he is. And it's a guy that you have to be really excited about seeing, because this is a guy that more than likely is going to play right away.
Yeah, he is. We talked about a lot of guys being in the mold of athletes, and we don't know what's going to happen. He seems at this point 100% locked in, and he's going to compete at corner. And with the way the roster is shaped out, with a lot of guys at that athlete position, he's a pure corner, and he probably will take reps with the first team in spring ball. And they're going to see him go toe-to-toe with the receivers on the roster and see what they got. And it's interesting talking about him because he has a very similar body type to our guest earlier tonight with Darren Walls, and that long, lean body with, the 4.4 speed and elite ball skills, and one of the top-ranked corners in the class. Like you said, with that transfer thing, I think he probably would have been the number 2 or 3 corner, barring injury, had he played this year. And he's a huge commitment. And going into this class, we really wanted to get those corners, and with the losses I've got to graduation. And this guy is one of those guys that I feel very confident saying will play right away.
So we touched upon all those, man. We got one more recruit to talk about. We can't leave this guy off the list. We're going to talk Scott Daly here. It's very interesting because Brian Kelly, we talked about, how important it is to have specialists on your team. And last year we brought in a kickoff specialist in Kyle Brenza. Well, this year we have a long snapper, and not just any long snapper. This guy is the number 1 rated long snapper in the nation. If you look at his story, he had 2 offers, us and Northwestern. So he didn't have too much to choose from. I'm really happy he's here. The guy, he went really into his training for that. I think it was really cool. Scott went to actually a long snapping training course. He went through long snapping school. He did everything he could to make sure he was good enough to be at the Division I level.
Yeah, I'm going to tell the parents out there listening at home, train your kids how to long snap because it is a very elite skill, and you'd be surprised. I'm surprised if you say you only had 2 offers being the number 1 long snapper in the country, because I remember in junior college we had one of the top long snappers, and he probably ran 5'8", 160 pounds, but he had offers from a couple SEC schools and ended up going full ride to Cal Berkeley. It's interesting that you would bring him in. It's kind of surprising because we did bring in a pure long snapper 2 classes ago in Jordan Cowart, but Brian Kelly saw a need, and there's definitely been some issues with special teams, not necessarily in that area, but if you have elite special teams, that just brings up the whole value of the team a notch. And like you said, I saw his videos. I couldn't even find a video of him snapping in a game, but they had the one-on-one tape where he's snapping at the Rubio camp. And, what I can tell, I'm not a long snapping expert. He looks very solid on film. But it's something that you want to have and you want to not have to worry about. So it's a luxury almost. Yeah,
he is. And I think that, it's cool that you point that out. Make sure you teach these kids that because that is a very underrated skill to have. Prime example of that is where I grew up. You can make every joke about Cincinnati Bengals, but the biggest one had to be their long snapping skills. Even in the years when those 2005 years when they were winning football games, we must have left 40 points on the board in the 3-year span with how bad the long snapping was. I think that's what Brian Kelly's really going to do a good job avoiding by bringing in Scott Daly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Some programs, I think they think it's almost a waste that you want to bring in an offensive or a defensive lineman or a tight end who has that skill set. But, Brian Kelly always has a plan. If he sits there and he says, I want to have the best long snapper in America, and I don't want to have to think about that guy, and I want him to snap all practice and not worry about routes and blocking. I just want him to focus on one thing. I have no problem with that. It makes sense, and let's hope that he is all that he's advertised.
And that wraps up our 2012 introduction to the recruiting class. If you tuned in for 2.5 hours with us just about, we thank you. I think we had a really good show tonight where we gave you a touch on the recruiting class, had a great interview with Darren Walls, promoted a great book and Dream of the Echoes. Unfortunately, Jason's not here for the sign-out, but Steve, I got to say, man, we had a really good show last week. I think we had an even better one this week.
Yeah, they're getting better. I think we're getting more comfortable, and the guests have just been great. We can't ask for anything more as far as what we're looking for. And I'm enjoying it. And, yeah, I think it was a great show. And I've been saying it on the show. Make sure you check it out. I'm going to split this show into 2 parts, 2 one-hour parts, and have video over with highlights of the recruits. And anybody out there been wondering what we look like, we're going to have a picture of each of the hosts, segments from the show, and with our Twitter handle over. So you can finally put that to rest and know who we are. So check that out on YouTube and on my page on herringbonesports.com. Should be up tonight in the second half by tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. It's a really cool thing we're trying to do. We're doing everything we can to expand this show. It's great. We're having a great time. We thank you, everyone who's tuning in. Next week, we will return to our special time, to our regular time, Thursday at 7 Eastern. We're trying to get some stuff lined up. Nothing is 100% confirmed, but if you want to keep up with us, if you follow us at TNNDN, we'll have it there. You can follow us all on Twitter. Jason is the Rabid Irish Fan. I am Irish Unmatched, and Steve is HB_sports. If there's any way you want to get in contact with us, go ahead and shoot us an email at contacttnndn@gmail.com. So for Jason, Steve, and myself, we want to thank you for joining us on this signing day, and we end this like we do every other show, guys.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.